Sohail, the number I gave you, 1,41,633 people died in road accidents in 2015. I've got a number for the number of accident deaths and injuries because of drunk driving. 2015, 16,298 people had died in accidents of drunk driving. Or the total number of accidents. The total number of deaths of that 16,000, 6,755. Injuries, 18,813. These are underreported numbers, as you know, in a country as large as ours. But these numbers are absolutely horrific by any standard anywhere in the world. We have some of the most unsafe roads for various reasons. Where do you draw the line? What is your message when you confront numbers like this?
See, while the campaign is genuinely laudable and there is no escaping this reality, there are three things that need to be done. Number one, we need education which is finite and with a purpose. We need demonstrable punishment for people who violate the laws. See, in this country, you can get away with blue murder. You'll hit someone, the laws are so weak, person will get bail. I mean, there was this lady who ran over someone and, driving the other side. We don't have demonstrable punishment. The third, which is very important, which I hope the doctor here will touch upon, is we have zero trauma apparatus around our centers, around our roads, around our cities. We are talking about Bombay and Delhi. What happens when you're on national highways? When you're between villages, when you're between towns, small towns? The maximum number of deaths happen because there is no immediate trauma management. I sit on the board of the Indian Head Injury Foundation, and we're seeing in the IHIF, the figures that are reported is in the first 5 minutes, if you don't have that care, you lose the person. So I think it's very, very critical for us to look at it from a holistic point of view. It's not about just consumer education, it's not just about punishment, and certainly not just about cameras, but it's about the whole apparatus that you need to create. An ecosystem which prevents people from being irresponsible. I've got 169 stitches on my head. I mean, that's partially the reason for my slight insanity. But I was knocked in by a drunk driver in Calcutta, and that was even before Mamata Banerjee was in power. So I can tell you, it's pretty dangerous when it happens.
You've not spoken about this. Would you like to talk a little bit more?
No. It was just an accident. There was no.
When did this happen, sir?
In 1996.
And this was a drunk driver who.
Yeah, a drunk driver in an ambassador. In those days, you still had an ambassador. For some of these people who've grown up, they've only seen Marutis, and it came and hit my car head on. And there was nothing you could do. I don't even think the guy went to jail, or may have gone, for a token reason. But the irresponsibility of the ecosystem needs to be highlighted. So I think this is a brilliant first step. You need to marry the political apparatus with the medical apparatus with the media machinery in order for all three things to work in harmony. Ultimately, as you rightly said, we can't afford to have people die because someone's behaved irresponsibly.
Yeah. Shaji, it was the Save Life Foundation that really pushed to have the Good Samaritan law. And it's a law now, it exists in India, which basically means that if you see somebody in distress, you can actually take that person to a hospital and not be bothered by the police. You don't even have to give your name to the hospital people over there. You can walk out. There is no harassment. How do you believe this can save hundreds of lives every year? And that's just a number off the top of my head. It could be many more.
Yeah, first of all, I think we have been as an organization at it for the past decade now. And in just the last 2-3 years, just to see the amount of dialogue and conversation around road safety is really heartening for us as an organization. I want to congratulate NDTV and Diageo for taking this initiative, not just for a year now. I'm seeing this every year, so it's great. I think people who die in road accident victims, 50% of them actually die of treatable injuries. So they can be saved. Typically they die because of excessive bleeding. The Good Samaritan law concept basically looks at bystander care. The person who is next to the accident victim or somebody who is passing by should be empowered not to be scared to call for emergency services. People typically die bleeding on the road. And so right now we have, as a country, we have a Good Samaritan law. Unfortunately, not much has been talked about it. Propagation has not happened, so people on the road don't know about it. So as of now, if you see an accident victim, go ahead and call the police, go ahead and call emergency services. You can remain anonymous. You have the right in India right now to not reveal your name. And that was the biggest fear for any individual.
And are
in this
police
country.
forces accepting this? Has it dawned on police forces that they need to be sensitive to this new law? They cannot be harassing a person who's actually trying to help a fellow citizen?
Not completely. It's a process. Typically, it takes at least a few years for the beat constable to understand that I will not be asking somebody for his or her name. This sensitization has to happen continuously. It cannot happen overnight. So, but that effort has to come from the government side as well.
Dr. Oak, tell us a little bit about the golden hour in a hospital. Why is the golden hour?
Yeah, it's so two things are important, as Sohailji very rightly mentioned. It's the pre-hospital period and the pre-hospital transfer. So one is you have to stop if someone has met with an accident and go for its assistance. Yes, you may be questioned, you may be detained in the casualty for some time. That's a part of life. Eventually, you're going to save somebody's life, and that anonymous person could be your next kith and kin. It has happened at times. Second thing is, how do you transfer? Because sometimes unscientific modalities of transfer have rendered more harm than the actual accident has done. It particularly happens in cervical spine injuries, lumbar spine injuries. So that is second part where we are working together. The third thing is, once a patient is received in the hospital, the whole culture of the hospital also needs to change from casualty, which is a casual approach, to an accident and emergency service area, where what is called as triage. Triage means to sort out. That is done. And suppose if there are 5 or 6 victims, we decide which one needs to be attended most and first. You know, ironically, he may be the quietest of the lot, but he's the one who is bleeding internally and needs more attention, rather than the one who is making all loud noise about this. So these are the fundamental things. But in that golden hour, if you are able to stabilize airway, if you are able to stabilize breathing, if you are able to stop hemorrhage, we can save significant number of lives.
Yeah. Shaina, thanks very much for being with us. The road safety bill is something that this government has spoken about, the minister has spoken about extensively, but it's difficult to actually get all parties and all states to accept it, because where does the funding come from? And so despite the best intention to push this forward, it's not happened. Is this going to happen soon? Can we expect it by this government?
Absolutely, without a doubt, and I say it because I have the conviction that Nitin Gadkari is the correct minister at the right place and somebody who has championed road safety. You know, we've lost some of our leaders also, not as if it's a token to leadership, but you take Gopinath Munde's case. I mean, it was most tragic how he just lost his life. Yes. And I think that has also been something that has been discussed internally in the party on multiple occasions. Not that I'm suggesting a life of a politician is more than the life of any other citizen. But you look at what Nitin Gadkari himself is doing. I mean, he has not just talked about this bill and championing the cause, but he has got all stakeholders. And correct me if I'm wrong, people like Dr. Oak have also been consulted. So there are stakeholders from various fields, and I think that what they have talked about and what Sohail said is so correct, that you have an accident, you have the immediate medical facility that is required, and then you have people like the Good Samaritans who are talking about the importance of bystanders. I'd like to question, even in a city like Mumbai, if we do see an accident, how many of us actually stop? All of us think, let's not get into this jhanjat. Yeah. Who wants to be a witness? Who wants to go to court?
So you wanted to say something?
Who wants to be a part of this whole problem and not realizing where you're going to go? So I think where it's important as a political class is also to give faith to the bystanders, that you have a moral responsibility, a legal responsibility. More importantly, you're a human being, and this could happen to any of us, so we must participate.
See, there is a very critical thing which governments of today are ignoring, and whether it's BJP, Congress, they're all the same in this regard, which is, when we were growing up, if you remember, We were part of the Boy Scouts movement. I mean, I'm sure girls were part of the Girl Scout movement, we hope. We were also part of NCC. One of the fundamental things that were taught were primary first aid care to people. All of that is missing from our curriculum. So even young children, who, by the way, have the greatest propensity to help, teenagers, they're the ones who are more courageous than the middle-aged, as it were. That, identified education, needs to be brought back into the system. We don't know how to administer first aid. We don't know how to prevent bleeding.
So true.
And
Sajid-
these are critical things which need to come back into the curriculum.
Part of what you've been doing is CPR training, right?
Yeah.
And who typically wants to actually learn about CPR skills and be certified in it? I mean, should it really be part of our school education, our curriculum?
Absolutely. I think CPR is not just for road accidents cases. It can happen in our homes as well. If somebody is having a heart attack, you can use that
Basic
training
reflex.
and help out your own kith and kin. But I think what's important is to understand who is the first responder, right? Even in a city like Bombay, typically it's always the beat cop or the police person who is actually around. But if you see, he will not be trained how to handle a victim. So I think, as what Suhail said, that we need to look at it holistically. Whether it's drink driving, what works in drink driving is enforcement is what works in drink driving. What works in roads and how we construct our roads is engineering. You were mentioning about the bill. Let me say that the government in the past 2 years has done incredible work to ensure that new legislation, a stronger legislation can be brought in. As you said, there were opposition from the states, but now they have an amendment bill which they have worked through.
Yeah.
And right now it's in the parliament. Now it's the parliament's responsibility,
To
as you know what's
discuss it.
happening in
Yeah.
the parliament as of now.
Parliament is allowed.
So I think it has to be a collective responsibility.
Sure.
Everybody has to get in there and get this thing passed.
Sure.